Please be not surprised.
Nobody ever gives us that opportunity.
Well, I'm not gonna take the time to pass them out, but let's do that. I just wanted to go over just a couple of things. The graph on the first page there just gives you an idea of how much the assessments have changed. This graph goes back to 2002. And just a little bit of a regression there. The reason I went back to '02, in 2002 was when the state went to new software called RPS version 4. They went up from version 3. Next year, 2019, we'll be going to another software. It won't be RPS version 5. It's called ACES. It's actually a statewide hosted database. So we won't be going through the county anymore. I'll leave that there. Basically what this does, the red line, for those of you that got color graphs, hopefully I made enough color ones, the red line represents what we call a major type A, which is residential. The blue line would be major type C, which is vacant, forest, and farms. So if a farm has a house and it's part of the farm, it would still be considered part of major type C, not part of major type A. Understand the fact that when you look at this very quickly, that the y-axis on the left represents major type C. The y-axis on the right represents major type A, so that we could put them together so you get some sort of feel. And the scale is double on the right than it is on the left. So basically what this is telling you is when there is an incremental change, that it's double for major type A. Basically, if you look at this, what you'll see, for those of you that were taxpayers and were here back in 2005, you will remember that these board meetings were attended by probably 5 times the number of people that are here now. 2005 was a big year, both for major type C and for major type A. That was the last complete town-wide reappraisal of every property. And for what it's worth, basically I came to a meeting similar to this in 2015 and made a recommendation about whether we should do it or not, and the board's, the general feeling from the board was to go ahead and do it. We did that. The only major changes really since that time have all been with major type C, and it affected most of the board members here, so you know it, and it's kind of funny. We talked about this at other board meetings. Some people who are in major type A, they have residential and they don't have any vacant land, don't even realize that some of this happened. But in 2012 was a substantial year. Basically, the aggregate for vacant land and farms and forests went from 35 million to 40 million. And then just 2 years ago, back in 2016, there was another bump, though not as substantial as 2012. So anyway, that gives you a little history. And basically, if you turn to the second page, this is not going to mean that much to you. Each year, and we talked about this, I think, at an earlier meeting, each year the state comes out with what they believe the relationship is between market value and the individual types. So the only substantial types that we have in Franklin are major type A and major type C. Major type B is commercial. It's obviously doesn't make up enough share of the town to be considered in this analysis. But in any event, in the past 4 years, excuse me, in the past 4 years, 3 of those years, the state's measure of these types indicated that the vacant land, farms, etc., were at a lower percentage of value than residential. Though it was never really all that much. In 2016, again, was that last time that we bumped, if you will, major type C, and that was because it was getting close to the 5% difference between the two groups. As I stand here tonight, I don't have any numbers for you for 2018, but I wanted you to be aware of, part of the process. Right now they do what's called a trend, which is the real technical appraisal term for it is a market conditions adjustment. They call it a trend. Basically what they're saying is from July 1 of 2016 to July 1 of 2017, because the 2018 roll carries a valuation date of July 1, 2017, last year. Okay? They're saying that they believe that major type C moved 5% during that time period. So you can infer from this, which is about all you can do. It doesn't mean it's gonna come true. You can infer from this that last year they said major type C was 92%, goes down 5%. The relationship goes down 5%, values go up 5%. That would put you at about 87, call it 88, 87.96, put you at about 88. The two things that interest me are, will the major type A be within 5% of what they think the major type C is? You know, because if it's not, then there will be a need for an adjustment. The other question about adjustment becomes, you know, how far do we want to slip below 100%? You know, back in 2005, we had stayed at 100% since '98. And we did dip there for a while as the market was very hot, but we've gotten, you know, this year we're at 99%, whatever that means. So at some point, we will have to make a decision as to, you know, do we want to do something so that we don't continue to slip? Again, we've talked about before, just simply the equalization rate dropping doesn't necessarily help or hurt you. What matters, I mean, it has no effect on town taxes. That's the first thing people need to understand. The equalization rate has absolutely no effect on town taxes. The only thing it would affect would be your individual exemptions that use the equalization rate. So that would be your veterans and your ag exemptions. Where the equalization rate matters is when it comes to school taxes and county taxes. So as that rate drops, as long as the rate in the other towns that pay into your school district or your county drop at the same rate, it has no effect. And of course, we have no way of, you know, we're just like an individual taxpayer. We can complain about our assessment, but you can't complain about your neighbor's assessment. I mean, you can complain about it, but you can't really effectively complain about it. So that's where we're at. Hopefully, a month from today, I will have more information for you. I don't know that I'll have a major type A and a major type C ratio. I hope that I will, but I would doubt it. I'll probably be closer to telling you where I think the state's gonna be. And without going into any detail in this forum, and I'm guessing if people were honest, they would all realize that neither most residential nor most farms, vacant land, forest are at these percentages.
Right.
I don't just leave that there because we don't need that. I'm sure the state views YouTube also. So
one of the residents, I guess in the town of Franklin, it was somebody asked me this question about Franklin is one of the few towns that does not give a senior citizen exemption or discount on assessed value? Or,
I could get you the list of the towns that do. There are some that do.
yeah, there are, yeah. Yeah, I can't remember who it was.
There's some
They
that do.
wondered why Franklin didn't. I said, I don't know.
It wasn't until recently we gave out any voluntary.
Right.
We always gave out mandatory.
Right, veterans. The veterans was the
Veterans,
only
we
one.
only
that we
have
really-
one that's voluntary.
Yeah, yeah, but I can't think who it was now, I've been asked, because they got the county figures, I guess, what towns do and
Right.
what towns
Yep.
don't, and we was one of the don'ts.
Yep. No, that's true.
And I said,
You may wanna be careful with that one.
gotta be careful, any of them.
Majority of the town, I mean, think of the effect in the future, not just today.
Yeah,
The thing with the senior citizens exemption is when you calculate the income for senior citizens, you include Social Security, which I know seems completely counterintuitive, but it's true. For star exemption, you don't include the Social Security. For senior citizens, you do. So like your basic limits, you know, let's say you had a limit of 15,000.
right, right,
I know, believe me, I know there are some people that are surviving on that, but I don't know how.
right.
So I guess all I'm saying is there probably wouldn't be that many people that would qualify, which doesn't, I'm not in a position to
Right,
recommend
right.
or not recommend.
Right.
But I'll get you whatever information I have. there really wouldn't be any way for me to know specifically how many would qualify. Because usually people in those positions don't file an income tax return, they file a worksheet that the state provides.
Okay.
So I would have to actually, I mean, it could be done. It could be done. You could go through those worksheets and figure out who it looks like would qualify. It would take, and I'm willing to do it, but it's not something I can
Right. I was just
do overnight.
concerned.
So we don't computerize that information.
Is that possible the guys get confused with state programs?
That
Because
might
I know in
be.
Jersey, it all goes through the state if you get an
Oh, okay.
exemption.
Well,
And
no,
that's town to town.
The towns, there are towns, as Jim said,
Yes.
there are towns that do have it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a local
exemptions but it's not, I don't think it's a norm, but they were asking, why doesn't Franklin? I said, I didn't know anybody did.
I've
so,
never heard it in Jersey, but down to town, it's only in the
Right.
states.
yeah. Should be considering it though, huh? No,
Whatever you want to do, you just tell me what information to get you and I'll do my best.
Is there a question?
On these numbers.
Yep.
If the trend is the houses are going up in sales through the year, and the farm or vacant land is going down in overall sales, is that gonna be widening the gap? That's what we're talking about when they start doing the numbers?
Yes, it would be. The only thing is, when you say widening the gap, don't try to make this graph say that there's a gap, because remember that they're on two different scales. This is giving you an idea of relationship between the two. But yes, absolutely. I mean, that's
What
why.
I've seen, what I know about, that houses going up and land is going down.
Well, right now, the state is saying that the land has gone up from July 1 of 16 to 17. Part of the problem with that is they had a negative trend for 5 years in a row, which was not right. But it is what it is. You know, that's the way they measure things, and they felt that for 5 years straight, vacant land was going down.
so I think it's gotta go up.
I mean, that wasn't happening.
Right.
You know, so they sometimes, yeah, I mean, they tend to be conservative and they tend to be late out of the gate too. So I mean, that may be part of it, absolutely. But they do come up with individual trends for the major types, and then they come up with individual ratios for the major types.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Jim, I have a question.
Sure.
For the MTC, do they consider, with those changes, the, like, product value produced by it or anything like that? In other words, suppose, you know, somebody was raising particular crops or forest products or whatever, and they tanked, so that the value of that land really to produce that product was, you know, it just didn't wash. Do they take any of those things into account? And if they don't, how do they come up with these figures?
Yeah, no, the only place where production actually comes in is in the exemption.
Okay.
That's a very, I mean, that's set by statute how they do that, the production to develop what the ag caps are. But this would be just, they're looking at sales information for those property types. And I've made this argument with them in the past that making a major type C like that makes no sense. And here's what I mean by that. Basically, the state has opined that anything that has a current use has to be, the value of it for assessment purposes has to be based on that. So in other words, if you have, let's say you have an abandoned dairy, abandoned's not the right word, it's been converted to beef, right? So the buildings are really not being utilized for what they were designed for, nor would anyone come in and use them for dairy today. When that property sells especially, it might even happen with a dairy, but certainly it's gonna happen with that property, it's probably gonna sell to someone who is gonna use it recreationally. They may rent it to an agribusiness land, but they're not gonna run it themselves. So we're valuing that based on a premise that isn't even there in reality. So now you've got an agricultural property that we're valuing based on it staying in what it's being used right now for, which for some agricultural properties is not realistic. And at the same time, in that same group of MTC, you have vacant land, which the state has opined is the only type of property that you can appraise for assessment purposes at what we call highest and best use. So we're looking at the vacant land and saying, okay, you're not doing anything with it. It could, not in Franklin, this is zoned and sized appropriately that there could be a hotel on it. We're gonna value that as hotel land. And now, but that's not what it's being used for right now. So we're gonna value that one, and we're gonna value the farm next door that probably is going to be converted when it's sold, and we're putting the two of them together. It's like the two extremes, and we put them together. I've broached this with them, and as you can imagine,
To no avail.
once I'm the one who suggested it won't change right away. But anyway.
Thank you.
Any more questions from Jim? There's one thing we have to approach at some time. We've got to get another member for your,
Yes.
for the towns. On Board of Assessment Review. So if anybody's interested, put the word out. Well, thank you, Jim.
Okay. I did go over what I said, but
Well, we asked other questions too, so we'll allow it this time. Okay, is there anything else to come to the board? Besides Lisa?
What?
I don't know, anything else come before the board, here you show up?
Oh, I have another meeting, so I don't have.
Oh, okay. I don't think there's anything else to happen, so I'll entertain the motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
She didn't hear me.
Who do you say?
Yeah. And we thank you very much, everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a